It was a spectacle back then, an event that people would attend. You would go with your best friends, sometimes your family. In stories in France, there's an account where they would wait for hours to get the best window seats. People who lived near the square would rent out their windows. There would be food, there would be drinks, there would be joy. But joy for what, you'd ask? To watch somebody die? To watch the condemned die in a very brutal manner? Well, yes. And that's just how it was back then. If there was an execution given today for the worst criminal alive, would you attend? So just a small disclaimer for today's video, some of the contents of these stories might be a little bit graphic. Death is something that each and one of us has to face, and it's a really intriguing topic, especially when the government kills you. Well, the last execution happened in this city in April of 1945. And since then, the death penalty has been basically abolished in Germany and throughout most of the world, with some notable exceptions. But the death penalty used to be a spectacle. It used to be something that everyone went out and saw. You would get beers and drinks and snacks with your friends and go watch the condemned die. Well, in today's video, we're going to talk about some of those condemned and their stories where they were executed here in the city of Regensburg. Today, with my friend Dr. Bernhard Lübbers, who wrote several books over the city of Regensburg, and especially about executions that happened here. And today we're going to talk about some of their stories. Margretha Röslmair met her demise right here, one of the stories of the condemned for murdering her own children, drowned in the Danube River. A brutal death, but was a common factor, something that people came out here to watch as a spectacle during those times.
Okay, now we are on the very spot here where Margretha Röslmair was punished to death. She was executed right here on the bridge in the Danube. She was drowned to death. She confessed under the torture that she murdered three children. We don't know her own children. We don't know how she murdered them. Maybe after birth, maybe before, we don't know. But she confessed it, and so she was executed right here. And because she confessed that she murdered three children, she was punished by ripping off 3 times skin out of her body by hot iron, burning iron. And after that, she was drowned here with a long stick. The executor put her down with a long stick. Why this is a special punishment for women? Because it's written in the Carolina, published in 1532 here in Regensburg. And it says you can either impale somebody, so put a stick through your heart, or you can drown somebody, forced to be drowned in water. We have the Danube here, a river.
So behind me, through these very doors at the old town hall here in Regensburg, was the cell where the condemned would wait to die. They would sit there and there would be holes large enough for the condemned to reach their hands out and touch their loved ones one more time. Afterwards, they would be picked up from here and, depending on the crimes, paraded through the city. Also here was the torture chamber. See, they had a system here. You were tortured 3 times. If you hadn't confessed, you were let go. But that's speculation, not always true. What is important though here is that the condemned were tortured and held in cells, sometimes not high enough for a gentleman like me to stand in, having to bend over. And as you can imagine, over several different hours, your back would hurt a little bit. That's just part of the experience that you would go through before your execution. So right behind me, where today is a residential building, is the location where people would be executed by beheading. Now, sometimes they would be pardoned. See, beheading was considered a higher status execution from hanging. So sometimes people would be pardoned from hanging and be beheaded in this location. Just like today's story, that of a gentleman named Baltasar.
We're talking about a guy named Balthasar Camerlehr from Munich. He was condemned to death because he was a bigamist, so he had 2 wives, which was a crime in a Christian society. In medieval and early modern times, it was a big crime. You could have only been married to 1 woman. That was the crime, yeah? And he also was condemned as a thief, so he should be punished by hanging in the gallows, but he was pardoned to a much more noble punishment. For us today, death is death, but in that time it was a much more noble punishment to be beheaded, because you could be buried in a Christian cemetery, and the people who were hung in the gallows, they hung there until the birds ate them. And the bones just crushed down, fell down, and there was no salvation because they were not buried in holy ground.
You have to remember that people during this time period were deeply religious, and it wasn't about how you died, it was about what happened afterwards. If you would be buried on sacred Christian ground, that meant the world to them. Now I want you to picture yourself sitting on death row today. In some places in the world, you can choose the way you go. You'd probably pick the less painful option, the fastest option, because for us today, it matters how fast, how painless the death execution would be. But for them, it wasn't about that. It was about going up to heaven, having that chance to see Jesus even after your sins. Because we were taught as Christians that God is a forgiving God. So you meet your maker and make your peace with him, but you couldn't do that if you were buried on unholy ground. So the next story is about a gentleman who enjoyed the company of sheep, cows, and horses. By enjoying their company, I think you get the reference of what I mean. And for that, he was put to death. But how he was put to death? Well, he was burned on the stake for his crimes. It wasn't at this exact location, but it was in a location nearby such as this, where Hans Kraus would have met his demise, burning at the stake and the flaming hot sensation.
Here in front of a monument for the Second World War, and nearby somebody was burned in 1606 in March, on the 23rd of March 1606, Hans Kraus from Aufhausen. He had relations with cows, sheep, and horses, and that's why he was condemned for. And he was burned in a big fire. Why in a fire? Because to purify. That's the same capital punishment which was taken for witches or magicians, something like that. To annihilate everything, and also this big crime. The crimes that were punished with fire were the worst.
And for some of the most severe crimes, such as brutal murder or high treason, a special punishment was reserved, especially in the Holy Roman Empire lands. That was breaking on the wheel, where they would basically lay you on the ground and with a giant wheel beat you, break your bones, make you suffer until your demise eventually came. And in August 1598, a gentleman named Peter Däschler met his demise in that exact way, nearby this very location.
And to bringing somebody to death with a wheel was a really special thing to say. It didn't happen very often. It was a rare thing, let's say. And so it was a spectacle. All the people were all around here watching how somebody was brought to death with a wheel, breaking all the bones, starting from the fingers over the arms, legs, all over the body. Okay, we talked a lot about capital punishment. Today we don't have capital punishment anymore in Germany. Nobody was executed since 1945, thanks to God. What we can learn is that we have different values and we have to defend it. The people back then, they weren't more evil than we are today. They were just different. They had a different set of values. It was a spectacle back then, like a sporting event. You know, they went there to see somebody punished to death, like you watch today, whatever, a football game or whatever. But what we have today here, at least in Germany, is something completely different. We have Western values and we have to defend them. That's the lesson we can learn.
So if you found today's topics intriguing, Dr. Lübbers wrote a book about this very topic, about the condemned in Regensburg, called Schreckens des Todes. A book of that in the German language, but easily translatable. Definitely worth checking out. And if you want to learn more about the city of Regensburg, he also recently came out with this fascinating book titled Regensburg, all about its fascinating history. Because Regensburg is a city of immense cultural importance from Roman times throughout the Holy Roman Empire until today. So check it out if you like it. The stories of the condemned are stories that have fascinated humanity throughout history, and it fascinates us today. We may think that we're away from it and we're better than those people from back then, but if there was an execution given today for the worst criminal alive, would you attend? The people of the past are just like us, but with different values and different systems that they grew up in. And it's important to remember that we don't judge them with our modern lens, that we try to view them and understand them. That brings us to an end of today's video. If you felt that you learned something with Dr. Bernhard Lübbers and myself, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel so we can continue to learn together and teach similar stories. Regensburg is a place with immense historical and cultural value, and we're going to be covering some of the stories related to Regensburg and Germany in general. So stick around for that so you can learn from them as well. Until the next time, I'll see you then.